Hello, this is Mark Holmes, editorial director of Via Satellite, and we have another of our Thursday morning conversations, which are becoming quite regular now. And I'm delighted to be joined today and by someone in the UK, which is always nice for me, Kyle Whitehill, who's the CEO of Avanti Communications. So before we talk about some satellite stuff, Kyle, tell us a little bit about life in lockdown for you and your family. What's it been like? And tell us a little bit about it.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you. I think this is probably the most topical conversation, isn't it, of the last 5 months? What's it been like? So, to be honest, it has not been. It's been tough in the respect of change of life. Not traveling, not going to the office, and so on. But from a physical point of view, I was locked down in London, and it was fine. My family were fine. I think the most significant thing that happened to me during lockdown was my first grandson was born in Kenya. So, of course, that turned into a great drama of how do we get them back from Kenya and so on. Of course, it was a great disappointment because when he came home, none of us could see him anyway. So, but yeah, apart from that, it's been fine.
Have you got to? I assume you've got to see him now.
Yeah, we did, and he's 4 months old now. He's a boy called Roman, and he's super happy. And yeah, I got to cuddle him for the first time a couple of weeks ago. We're very pleasant.
Oh, congratulations! Wow, that's always good. And you said is that the first grandchild?
Yes, that is. Yeah, I have 3 sons, and this is my oldest son's and first grandchild.
Oh wow! So what a big moment, and what a I guess a big story when hopefully you look back on this in a few years' time, and very unusual circumstances, to bring someone into the world, obviously over the last few months. One of the, I mean, we've been having a lot of fun with these conversations, asking about TV, music, dramas, and things that people have been doing. So, have you been watching anything that you've really enjoyed? It could be a movie, a drama, a documentary. What's been? Give us 1 or 2 recommendations. What you've enjoyed watching.
So let's start with Netflix. I'm going to make 2 strong recommendations. The first one is, which is an American kind of dark detective series and is spellbinding. So Sinners on Netflix. And the second one, which I'm working my way through at the moment, is called Good Girls, which is also it's one of those like nothing else can possibly go wrong for these poor women. Like sort of like episode after episode after episode, you go, no, just give us an episode that's not got terrible drama in it. Yeah, they keep on delivering. That's great. And then I decided I would work my way through Richard Curtis's films. I love all them, Notting Hill, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, stuff. Just fantastic. And he did all the Mr. Bean movies. So I've had a bit of a Richard Curtis binge.
That actually, someone mentioned, I think, in one of the earlier ones about Time, which I believe is a Richard Curtis one as well. Do you have a favorite Richard Curtis one you particularly? I mean, I must admit it's a bit of a secret. I kind of secretly like them as well, which is not a secret anymore because the whole satellite community will know. But which ones do you particularly like?
So I think the first 2 that my attention was 4 Weddings and a Funeral, which would definitely be in my list of top 5 movies of all time. But then I love that Notting Hill thing, because I think for most people who weren't born and brought up in London, we have very little insight into what London's actually like. And of course, I think when he did that in the 90s, he brought to life that kind of yuppie London, Notting Hill trendy thing that was a complete mystery to the rest of us. So I think that one really caught my attention as well. The idea that, the impoverished bookseller and Julia Roberts just stumbles in there one day and then they fall madly in love. That's Hollywood.
It was a brilliant. I mean, we've watched it about 2 or 3 times ourselves, and it was one of those movies of the time as well. It was one of those very sort of, I think that late 90s when you call Britannia as well. It was just sort of, I think it captured a certain mood in the country at the time. And I mean, obviously Hugh Grant always plays that slightly foppish, Englishman role incredibly well. So it's
last year, and he stars in that film called The Gentleman, where he's a complete opposite character of that, and he's amazing. I think he's fantastic, but it's so hard to get your mind around Hugh Grant going from what you described to the kind of East London villain.
It would be. I mean, on the subjects of Richard Curtis, Love Actually was one that it's one we tend to always watch over Christmas, and you know, I mean, it's just like a who's who of you know, British talent within that movie, and even though you know it can happen, it's always a very enjoyable. It's always a nice one to watch around Christmas. It's yeah, it's one in our house. Oh, well, I'm learning something new. I wouldn't have necessarily had you down for a big Richard Curtis fan, but we've learned something new there. What about in terms of music? We've gained some very interesting conversations about music with these chats that we're having with people. Do you have any particular favorite artists, genres that you particularly like?
Yeah, I was my first live concert ever was 1978 at the Glasgow Apollo, which was Status Quo's Rocking All Over the World tour.
Okay.
And that was when I was 16, and from that point on, I just become like a massive rock and heavy metal fan. So my favorite band of all time is AC/DC. Love the Ramones, and then I've listened to everything since then. But my sort of very sort of like frank confession for you today is that I have become absolutely obsessed by TikTok. I hadn't used TikTok until last week. Okay. And now this amazing song called Friendships by Pascal Le Toublon, which everybody on TikTok shuffling, dancing to. And honestly, it's just completely consumed me now. It's just unbelievable. So I'd urge you all to go look at Shuffle Dancing on TikTok, and you'll hear Friendships, which is just a great song.
So have you been doing anything on TikTok yourself yet? Have you been, should we ask this?
I did one TikTok video 2 Sundays ago, but it never got into public, fortunately.
Oh, wow. I feel like I may have to join TikTok now just to sort of, you know, potentially sort of see what happens. I mean, heavy metal, I mean, I like a little bit of rock, heavy rock, even a little bit of metal on occasions. And do you have, like, I mean, you mentioned about Status Quo. Do you have a gig that you look back on and think, wow, that was just a top gig, or one that really stands out that you've seen?
Yeah, so in 1980, just after Bon Scott died, Bon Scott had been the lead singer of AC/DC. Yeah. And he died tragically in 1979. And so the comeback tour was called Back in Black. And they invited Brian Johnson, who was a lead singer of Budgie, I think it was, up in the Newcastle area, to come join them. Yeah. And so in 1980, I saw AC/DC for the first time live again at the Glasgow Apollo. And I'll never forget that. It was completely black, and then this bell sounded, which is the start of Hell's Bells. And I will never forget that, never ever forget that concert. And I've seen them 5 or 6 times, but that one in 1980 is the standout one. It was poignant, it was powerful. Nobody could believe that anybody could replace Bon Scott, and Brian Johnson went on to do nearly 40 years of AC/DC.
Wow, no, I do know. I mean, I was brought up with cousins that were very into sort of the metal era of AC/DC, Whitesnake, Iron Maiden, and a lot of those. So I've kind of, even though I probably didn't go quite as heavy as that, you know, I was, you know, very aware of, you know, a lot of those songs, and, you know, my other family members going to those concerts. So that's really cool. I mean, that's I remember, I mean, actually, ironically, one of the last concerts I went to was, quote unquote, a metal concert. This Dutch symphonic metal band called Delane, which I really enjoyed. It's very heavy, but there's a lot of you know, orchestration, symphonic, alongside heavy guitars, which is something that I really enjoy. And it was great to go to a concert, although I think I stood out like a sore thumb, because I sort of like a, you know, I'm not sure I was really, you know, dressed for the occasion in the way a lot of other people were, I thought, but it was a lot of fun. enjoyed it was a really good experience. So it's really good. Let's talk a little bit about work stuff. I mean, we've been talking to a lot of people in the industry over the last few weeks with these conversations, and someone who's the CEO of a satellite company. How has your sort of work-life balance changed as a result of what's happened? Obviously, you haven't been going into the office. You've had to sort of adapt, like every company within satellite, very quickly. How's that been for you, Carl?
Yeah, I think we went through a very similar experience to everyone else I've talked to about it, which is, so I actually went to the satellite show in Washington, and I think at that point in March, I was in denial about there was some kind of problem going to happen. Nigel and I went from there to New York to meet shareholders, and Manhattan was a ghost city at that point. Yeah. So I think when we came back, I thought this is probably a month, and then boom, lockdown comes. I think we all sat in our kitchens or bedrooms on Zoom thinking, oh, actually, this is quite okay. And then I think that quite quickly we realized was that surely this is the opportunity now to look at what's the new normal. And particularly my office in central London is in Blackfriars. And that's a terrific commute for the vast majority we have about 150 people in Blackfriars. Yeah. There's a commute of on average about 80 to 90 minutes a day. And so I think quite quickly people realised there's got to be some kind of balance comes out of this. Now, I'm lucky because I've always worked from home now and again because I came up through sales and we always had the opportunity to work from home as required. It was encouraged at Vodafone. But most line managers have always struggled with the concept of working from home means not doing very much work. And I think that was the novel thing, was that actually people became more productive. So I think we settled into rhythm. And then I think phase 2 was about 5-6 weeks ago. We said enough, right? This is killing us, right? There is zero gap between work and home now, and people are slamming meetings in and Zooms in at no notice. And my shareholders are America, so my day stretches on anyway. So I think phase 2 is a sort of realization around no work-life balance. So we cut down to 4 days a week. Tried that for a month. We really enjoyed that. And then we started talking about Agile Avanti, which is, come on, let's find a way of being more efficient going forward that doesn't abandon the normal of before, because I do think there's an important strand here about why people need to go to an office, certainly for a proportion of the week. But, let's find a new normal that works for everyone.
It's very interesting. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about today is, I mean, when you look at, even as a journalist, and you look through Avanti's press release section, there's some very interesting contracts in Africa and Europe and all over the world. And, with the type of customer base that you've been building, and obviously you can't have face-to-face meetings. What has sort of been the impact, do you think, on the overall business? Do you think you've been set back in any way, or you where you thought you might be sort of pre-pandemic?
So I think that the straight answer to your question is no. Of course, I'm not where we thought we would be. We're behind on revenue, but we survived okay. In the backdrop of 4 satellite companies going into some form of bankruptcy in the last 3-4 months, I think we've done well to survive. If you've got an existing customer relationship, you can keep that alive on Zoom-in calls, no problem. In fact, it made some stuff relatively straightforward because you didn't have to say, let's wait until we go to. So I think that existing customer set, no problem. Where you have an issue is it's almost impossible to build a new customer relationship through a very different medium. So I think that's where the problem's been for most people, is that as long as your existing customer base is intact and growing, you can survive without the new stuff, but you're not going to see as much growth, or in fact any growth, if you don't get the new stuff coming. So that was why each month been hoping, particularly around the US government business, unless that comes out of lockdown, which it's not, it's going to be impossible to seal any new contract wins in that segment. But that industry, space, wholesale, carriers in Africa, been fine. And as I said, it's just this one Achilles heel around new customers in the US government.
What about new customers elsewhere outside? I mean, when you're looking in in Africa or even in Europe. And I mean, you still can't see those customers either. So how is it impacting getting new business there?
If you have to or had to install equipment, then you had a problem. So the way that affects you is that, like, let's say you've got an existing agreement with someone who delivers service into Afghanistan, no problem, but they can't then install new equipment into new customers in Afghanistan, probably can't get the equipment there, definitely can't get an engineer there, definitely can't physically install on the ground. So it's going to hold that part back, right? That's a bit that, you know, we had one customer relationship where you had to do the deal in America to get into a base somewhere in the Middle East on foreign territory. And you just go like, look, don't waste any time on that. That's not going to happen.
And what's your sort of, I mean, when we look, I mean, you mentioned there's been some big news in the industry this year. Maybe some of those weren't necessarily a surprise. I mean, if you look at OneWeb, for example, there'd been, I think it's fair to say, a few rumors around them even before, you know, the news broke. Do you think the overall, when you look at the industry overall, it's not in bad shape considering, and will ultimately emerge from this stronger, even though undoubtedly there will obviously be some short-term pain?
Yeah, 100% I do. And I think if you look at it in three parts, right, you look at the big six traditional geo satellite operators, then they've largely been announcing results that are there or thereabouts. I think the Intelsat thing, as you said, that was nothing to do with COVID-19. Intelsat's decision on Chapter 11 was clearly about, you know, going forward, what shape of business do they want? They will come back very strongly, is my opinion. So I think the big six are in good shape. The second level where we sit, you know, largely they're government owned, so it's unlikely they're hugely impacted by that. The third one, which is the shake-up one, is the GEO guys all been in business for 30 years. So the LEO constellation, this is so typical of technology, is to introduce a new technology, convince people to spend a few $1 billion, and then halfway through go, oh, by the way, it's going to cost more and take longer. So we need a ton more financing. I mean, anybody could have told SoftBank, you're going to need a ton more money for that constellation because it's going to cost more and take longer. So I don't think that's a surprise. I think the bigger impacts in that ISP space, you know, Global Eagle, Speedcast, you know, guys who've been really pummeled by changing market dynamics, and then cruise liners, oil and gas, you know, where you've got really macroeconomics going on, and that has a sort of devastating impact on their business model. But, you know, my view is 2.5 years into the satellite industry, super resilient, delivering service that terrestrial networks can't deliver, and then we all watch with some sort of detached bemusement about what will happen with LEO in the future.
What do you think will happen? I mean, are you I mean, LEO, I mean, I think it's fair to say is a little bit of a checkered history at this stage. Do you think things will get better, or are we repeating the late 90s all over again?
Yeah, I think when I first came to it, I said, look, new technology is tough, especially when you've got an established technology that does the job. Now, the challenge for the GEO guys, us included, was to get to a price point and a coverage where you could provide an alternative service to terrestrial networks, and that's happening every day. I think the LEO challenge is that they're saying that they want to bring rural broadband, and that market's just not big enough to invest billions and billions of dollars into it. So I think they're in a bit of a trap, the LEO guys. So you're either going to compete with fiber, which is impossible. If fiber's there, then it's fiber. Compete with GEO, and said these are customers who require a very different type of service from what LEO will do. And then thirdly, you're trading into market around rural broadband that we tried to do and realized it was expensive, small, and difficult to access. So somebody will do something with it because there's billions of dollars into it. What the UK government up to, no idea. I genuinely am baffled by that one. So they must know something the rest of the industry don't.
Let me ask you about that quickly. I mean, UK government, OneWeb, satellite navigation. I mean, I know it's not all about that, but when you heard that news, I mean, I don't know if you got any tip off about it or whatever, but when you saw that announcement, what was your sort of initial reaction to that?
Somebody must know something that the rest of the industry don't know, because it doesn't make any sense. It's not a GNSS system, right? It was built to deliver rural broadband into relatively remote territories of America, Arctic, Africa, wherever. And you're competing with global navigation systems of America, China, Russia, and Europe that are all well established, that have taken years and billions of dollars. So I don't know. And then that compounded it with the Bharti thing, because I know Bharti very well, because I worked and lived in India with Vodafone. So I know Bharti, fantastic company. And again, my confusion was around, that's an interesting choice of JV partner. So what they know that we don't know, and perhaps there's a big play somewhere. So I didn't. I think somebody sent me a press link, because we'd all been speculating the week before that it wasn't going to go to China. There was a rumor it was Canada. There was a rumor it was America. So I think this one caught literally the whole industry by surprise.
I think it really did. And I will sort of end back on a fun question. I want to go back to your heavy metal roots, because it seems totally right that we go back and stuff. So if we're putting a Spotify heavy metal playlist together, give me two songs, Carl, that would be your sort of top heavy metal choices for a playlist.
So the first one would be Back in Black, AC/DC. And the second one would be probably Green Day, American Idiot.
Okay, two very different songs, but I said I know the Green Day one better than the AC/DC one. I think I've heard the AC/DC one many years ago, but I'll have to check that one out again and give that one a little. Well, Kyle, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've talked everything from TikTok, heavy metal, Richard Curtis, and we've thrown in a little bit of satellite as well, which is good. Congratulations once again on becoming a grandfather for the first time, from everyone from the Via Satellite team. And fantastic. How old is he now?
He's 4 months old now.
Goes quick. And again, we wish your team, your family, and everyone at Avanti a safe period ahead. We hope the company, we know it's a difficult period for all of us right now, but we hope you can lead the company through it. It's it's a company that's doing some very good work as well. But when I see some of the press releases of some of the projects you're involved in, it's very inspiring, exciting. So I wish you all the best, and thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Mark. My pleasure as well. Thanks very much indeed.